David stared at the folder. Inside were the final statements for his mother's IRA. $480,000. 40 years of his parents' careful saving. No fancy vacations. No new cars. They drove the same Ford Taurus for 18 years. Every extra dollar went into that account. Margaret, a retired librarian. Frank, a retired machinist at Goodyear, Akron, Ohio. They had two simple goals. Never be a burden and leave something real behind. On February 14th, 2025, Margaret collapsed in the kitchen while making her famous cinnamon rolls. Massive stroke. She was 72. Frank inherited her IRA, the way they'd planned. 6 months later, on August 8th, Frank sat down in his recliner to watch the Cleveland Guardians game and never woke up. Heart attack. He was 74. David and Lisa buried their father on a Thursday. The following Monday, they walked into a small tax office, still numb, holding the IRA paperwork. They assumed this was the easy part. No probate. Direct beneficiary designations. Their parents had taken care of everything, Lisa finally spoke. So we can just stretch this over our lifetimes, right? Take a little each year, like Mom wanted? The tax preparer, a woman who'd known the family for 20 years, put her pen down. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. David felt his stomach tighten. She said, "There's something you need to understand before we go any further." Lisa's voice cracked. "What?" The preparer looked them both in the eye. "This money is not going to do what you think it's going to do." They thought the money would finally give them security. They were wrong. What just happened to David and Lisa is happening right now in living rooms, law offices, and tax preparation cubicles all over America, and almost nobody sees it coming. In the next few minutes, I'm going to uncover the hidden tax trap sitting inside millions of retirement accounts, the trap your broker probably never mentioned, and your estate plan may be completely blind to. You'll learn why naming your children as direct beneficiaries could quietly hand the government a six-figure windfall that should have belonged to your family. And more importantly, you'll learn the simple, legal alternatives that smart retirees are using right now to protect their life's work. If you have an IRA and children you love, this video is for you. If you are that child, share this with your parents today. Before we go any further, please tap like, hit, subscribe, and drop a comment. It truly helps this urgent message reach the families who need it most. Here's what millions of Americans still believe. When you pass away, your IRA goes directly to the person you named on the beneficiary form. No probate, no lawyers, no court. And if you leave it to your adult children, they can stretch out the distributions over their own life expectancy, taking just a small required minimum distribution every year, keeping the tax-deferred growth compounding for decades. This was called the Stretch IRA, and for years, it was glorious. Imagine a father with a $400,000 traditional IRA. He passes away at 78. He leaves it equally to his 45-year-old daughter, a school teacher. Under the old rules, she could take just a few $1,000s out each year based on her life expectancy. The rest kept growing tax-deferred. The IRS got a tiny bite annually. The family built real, multi-generational wealth. That was the promise. That was the law. And millions of families built their entire retirement legacy around that promise. But here's where the misunderstanding begins. On January 1st, 2020, everything changed. The Secker Act became law, and buried inside its pages was a quiet, devastating shift. Congress killed the Stretch IRA for the vast majority of non-spouse beneficiaries. Almost nobody noticed. The news cycle was noisy. Your account statements never mentioned it. Your custodian didn't call you. I still meet retirees every single week. Smart, careful people who have updated absolutely nothing. Their beneficiary forms still read, "To my children equally." They smile and say, "We took care of it." That's not the biggest problem. The real shock hits when those children walk into a tax office, grieving, and learn about the 10-year rule. Under current law, if you leave your traditional IRA directly to an adult child, that child must withdraw every single dollar of that inherited account within 10 years of your death. They cannot stretch it. They cannot let it quietly grow for 30 more years. The clock starts ticking the day you die. But here's what surprises most families. There are no rules about how much they have to take out each year, except that the account must be completely empty by December 31st of the year containing the 10th anniversary. They could take nothing for 9 years and then drain it all in year 10. Or they could take a little each year. It's their choice. And that choice can create a massive, involuntary tax bomb, because every dollar they withdraw from a traditional IRA is taxed as ordinary income. It gets added on top of their salary, their spouse's salary, their bonuses. It can push them from the 22% bracket into the 24%, the 32%, or even the 37% bracket. It can trigger the 3.8% net investment income tax. It can cause them to lose deductions, phase out credits, and pushed their Medicare premiums sky high through IRA surcharges, all because of a beneficiary form that looked so simple. Let me give you a real example. Robert, age 60, lives in Texas. His mother dies and leaves him $500,000 in a traditional IRA. Robert is an engineer earning $130,000 a year. He's already in the 24% federal bracket. If he takes nothing for 9 years, that account could grow to over $700,000, maybe more. Then, in year 10, he must withdraw the entire balance. That single withdrawal, stacked on top of his salary, will rocket him into the 37% bracket. Between federal taxes, the Medicare surcharge, and state taxes if he lived in a different state, he could lose over 40% of that inheritance to taxes. More than $280,000 gone to the IRS forever. And it gets worse. If Robert had just received that money as a check in a taxable brokerage account from his mother's estate, he would have gotten a step-up in basis, potentially owing zero capital gains tax. But because the money sat inside an IRA wrapper, every dollar is pre-tax income. The government has been waiting decades for its cut. And the 10-year rule forces it all to surface in a single, devastating decade. That's what Congress intended. They wanted the tax revenue faster, and they got it. Almost nobody sees this coming, especially when multiple siblings are involved. Imagine 3 children inherit a $900,000 IRA. They each get $300,000. One is a single school teacher making $55,000. Another is a married surgeon making $600,000. The third is a disabled adult on Medicaid. Their tax situations are wildly different. The direct beneficiary designation treats them exactly the same. It forces distributions equally, ignoring their real-world circumstances. The surgeon gets crushed with top-bracket taxes. The disabled sibling could lose government benefits because the distributions count as income. The teacher might dodge the worst of it, but still pays thousands she never budgeted for. There was no strategy, only a form. Here's where everything changes. The solution isn't to disinherit your children. It's to leave the IRA differently, not directly to them, but to a properly drafted trust. Specifically, a see-through trust or an accumulation trust that qualifies as a designated beneficiary under IRS rules. When drafted correctly, the trust becomes the legal beneficiary. The trust can then control the timing of distributions, protect the money from creditors, divorce, and lawsuits, and, critically, manage the tax impact year by year. The trust can throttle the withdrawals so they never push a beneficiary into a higher bracket. It can coordinate with a special needs plan. It can keep the money growing inside the trust, protected for a lifetime. But this is not a DIY project. The IRS regulations around trust beneficiaries are complex. If the trust does not meet specific requirements, valid under state law, irrevocable upon death, identifiable beneficiaries, proper documentation provided to the custodian, the entire plan fails, and the 10-year clock can shrink to just 5 years, or even require full immediate distribution. Many attorneys get this wrong. You must work with a qualified estate planning attorney who specializes in retirement accounts. Not all trusts are created equal. Now consider a different story. Eleanor, 77, a widow in Florida. She had $720,000 in an IRA. She had 2 daughters. One was a financially stable professor. The other was a recovering addict with a history of bankruptcy and a toxic marriage. Eleanor's original beneficiary form split everything 50-50. The advisor asked a simple question. What happens if your daughter going through a difficult time gets a $360,000 check? Eleanor froze. They restructured the plan. The IRA now names a standalone retirement trust for each daughter. The trust protects the money from creditors and ex-spouses. It distributes only RMDs. The principal stays shielded. The professor can still access funds within the 10-year window, but in a controlled, tax-efficient way. The other daughter's trust has a professional trustee and specific guardrails. The mother slept through the night for the first time in years. And there's one more story. Richard, 68, in Arizona. He had a $300,000 IRA and a disabled grandson on supplemental security income and Medicaid. If that IRA had gone directly to the grandson, the inheritance would have immediately disqualified him from benefits until the money was spent down. They used a third-party special needs trust as the IRA beneficiary. Now, when Richard passes, the IRA will flow into that trust. The trustee can take distributions over 10 years, using the money to pay for therapies, a wheelchair-accessible van, and quality-of-life expenses that Medicaid doesn't cover, all without jeopardizing government benefits. That grandson's life will be richer, not destroyed by an inheritance. These outcomes are not accidents. They are the result of intentional design. If you are watching this and you have an IRA, do not let your beneficiary beneficiary form be the last word. Go find that form. Look at it. If it lists your children individually, you may be inviting a tax catastrophe. The first step is to find an experienced elder law or estate planning attorney, preferably one who understands the SECR Act regulations that the IRS finalized in 2024. Ask them directly. Should my IRA beneficiaries be my children outright, or should they be through a trust? The answer will depend on your state, the size of your account, and your children's circumstances. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. You may also consider a Roth conversion strategy while you are alive. Paying taxes now at your potentially lower bracket so that your children inherit a tax-free Roth IRA. But be careful. That conversion itself is a taxable event. You need to model it with a CPA. The point is that you have options, but you must act before it's too late. Do not let a well-intentioned form write a check to the IRS that your children never meant to sign. For most Americans, leaving an IRA directly to kids is not a plan. It's a ticking clock. We started this story in an Akron tax office. David and Lisa sat in silence after the preparer explained the 10-year rule. They calculated that if they each took their half, roughly $240,000, over 10 years, on top of their modest incomes, they would lose nearly $90,000 combined to unnecessary taxes. Money their parents had sacrificed to save. Money meant for Lisa's daughter's college fund. Money meant for David's own retirement security. Lisa looked at the photo of her parents. They never would have wanted this. David nodded slowly. They asked if anything could be done. The preparer shook her head. Your father died with that beneficiary form as it was. It's irrevocable now. I'm so sorry. That's the quiet tragedy. The paperwork was perfect until it wasn't. The love was real. The strategy was missing. Your IRA is not just a number on a statement. It is 30 years of waking up early, skipping luxury, and believing you were building something that would outlast you. That dream is still possible, but only if you protect it with a plan that reflects the law as it is today, not as it was a decade ago. Please, don't let your legacy become a tax receipt. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep telling the stories that matter. I'll see you in the next one.